Okay, we've got a nice new intro there because we're in a different game engine. A murder in Buckfield. Here we go. A few things to talk about before we start this review. Firstly, this developer has actually done interviews about not only this game, but some of his other games, including Kingdom of Neandria, so neato. Secondly, I have to actually shake up my formula for this, because there's zero combat in this game. So for this game and any other games that don't have combat, I will instead be reviewing this game on story, character, logic, exploration, and enjoyability. I'll explain the logic when we get there. Now that we're in the back half of this season's games, let's get looking at it. A Murder in Buckfield takes place in 1995, in a small town in the US of A. You play as rookie detective who, in my game, I named Hugo Wilkes Barr, as you and your police partner Clive Henderson investigate the murder of a young girl. You soon learn that most people in this sleepy town are hiding secrets of their own, and the question soon comes down to whose secret was worth cutting someone's life short over. This story kept my attention effortlessly, and often I'd find myself stopping and trying to logic together who I thought committed the murder with the information I had. And while I'm probably still about halfway through Act 2, I have my suspicions with the pieces I've got that I'll elaborate on in the next section because, oh boy. With everything considered, I'm going to give A Murder in Buckfield a story of 4 out of 5 for its story. It's well-written, engaging story, but there are a few questionable choices that I will elaborate on a little bit later that hold it back from getting that full-scale 5. Strap in. While you only play as the detective, if I just reviewed him, it'd be a pretty shitty short section. So I'm going to rank all of the characters in this game. I'm going to talk about all the characters in this game that have been mentioned by name in alphabetical order. So let's do this. Aaron Drum is a journalist at the failing Buckfield Gazette and has next to no other staff because of failing paper sales. Betty Collins works with her husband at the general store in Buckfield. She's cooperative with the investigation when she can, but doesn't have a lot to offer to help. Ben Vinning is the first of a few members of Buckfield's police department. He's a bit of a hard ass compared to his contemporaries. Brad Foster is a really annoying git who feels the need to insert himself into every single goddamn conversation in the general vicinity. I don't like him. Carol Mitchell is the victim's aunt. She's deaf, which makes questioning her a little harder than usual, but she's incredibly forthcoming with information as she was the last person to see her alive. Clive Henderson, as mentioned before, is your police partner. He's taken out of the investigation due to an illness stemming from food poisoning. Eddie Blake is a drifter who wandered into town one day. Everyone seems suspicious of him, and a few people have said that he's schizophrenic, but having not met the man yet, I can't comment on him. Emily Johnson is the victim of this story. Life cut tragically short, but everyone around her seems to just be fucking assholes. Eric Cornell is the owner and manager of both the hotel and the apartment building in Buckfield, with a tendency to sleep on the job. Frank Lawson is the chief of Buckfield Police, was also the person to ID the victim's body according to the autopsy report. Gary Collins, along with his wife Betty, owns the general store. He supplies information about his stock when asked, although not all of it is helpful for the investigation. Jacob Turner is a librarian from out of town. He's certainly cagey and sketchy when spoken to, but seems to have something of a friendship with the victim. Jenny Thompson is a ditzy server for the town's restaurant, friendly and helpful when asked about things. Jim O'Malley is the bartender for the town's restaurant. He gives the detective the first real lead as to potential suspects with a photograph of the victim. Laura Wallace is the friendlier policewoman in Buckfield. While a little haughty at the beginning, she soon warms to the out-of-town detective and his methods. Linda Johnson is the victim's mother. Widely regarded as a drunk by other townspeople, she spends a good chunk of the investigation racked with grief. Lisa Hutchinson is a pharmacist at the town clinic. She's got something of an admirer, but otherwise is incredibly efficient with her work, working multiple jobs at once. Maggie Green is the city hall clerk and town gossip. She'll readily supply any information, no matter how useful it may be, that she deems important to the investigation. Mike Daniels is the town doctor and the coroner who performs the autopsy. He's a man of very few words, but he elaborates quite substantially on the autopsy report. Nancy Foster is Sarah's mother, who I'll explain more about later. She keeps to herself in the little interactions she's involved in. Olivia Baker is an artist and a fucking horn dog, practically begging to jump the bed with the detective. Paul Richards is the victim's ex-boyfriend, known also as Hot Shop Hood Spice Dog, or something like that. He gets the blame thrown at him for a lot of things due to being the closest to a delinquent this town has. Randy Cooper is Sophie's father. His statue had its head stolen off it for some reason. Ron Peters is the town's pastor and a little bit of a creep. I'll explain later. Sarah Foster is the victim's best friend. She's destroyed by the death of her best friend and outright refuses to come out and speak, only speaking through the door. Sophie Cooper was the victim's friend, but the two drifted apart as the victim started heading towards drugs and other substances. Taylor Green, not to be confused with Maggie Green, is a journalist assistant and the other worker at the Buckfield Gazette. Terry Jones is the city manager. His conversations with the detective are rather short due to him being, quote, busy with work. Tommy Harris is a mechanic and the on-again, off-again boyfriend to Linda Johnson, a Vietnam vet with a hot temper. And Victor Luis is a restaurant owner and madly in love with Lisa Hutchinson. With this colourful entourage, the story naturally leans towards more of these characters than others being suspicious. In fact, the game paints 6 suspects for the murder. These are Eddie Blake, Jacob Turner, Linda Johnson, Paul Richards, Ron Peters, and Tommy Harris. And while these 6 are all wildly colourful in their own ways, I haven't met Eddie yet, so I can't comment on that, my personal favourites were Paul and Tommy. I'm now going to elaborate here on who I think is the murderer from these 6 and why. I do it in logic, but this relates a lot more to the characters than the logic, so I'm going to do it here. Firstly, I don't think it's Eddie. We haven't met him yet, but everyone has been throwing shit at Eddie to see if it'll stick, so it just feels a bit too obvious. I also don't think it's Paul. During the conversation you have with him on day 2, he seems to be overacting his, whatever the hell his name is, persona to hide his grief, and after being reassured he wouldn't be in trouble if he did so, does confess to breaking the window, but states he didn't steal the statue head. Linda, I also think, is safe. The murder involved a sexually charged act on the victim, and Linda, ignoring her familial connection aside, lacks the ability to do that. The life insurance policy is a bit weird, but she does have a justified explanation for that. Which leaves Jacob, Tommy, and Ron. Out of these 3, Tommy is the one I feel least likely to have done it. He's shell-shocked from Vietnam, and unless he had a bad flashback or something, he doesn't really have a motive to go after the victim. He swears up and down the whole way home that he never laid a hand on anyone. And while a few people may give conflicting information about having hit Linda, no one has ever said anything about him laying a damn hand on the victim, which I think helps in my mind. Ron has a motive. He's been accused of being a creep by both Linda and Paul for very different reasons. Linda witnessed Ron being staring longingly at the teenage victim, which resulted in her stopping her church attendance, while Paul witnessed him pleasuring himself after giving the victim a haircut. Assuming that the victim found out about the pastor's deviancy, she could have been silenced by Ron. It's a motive. But I think Jacob is our killer. His responses are quoted as being well-rehearsed. He's from out of town and would take both the victim and her best friend to EDM parties on the weekend, which explains the trace amount of cocaine and alcohol in the victim's bloodstream. He's also in deep shit with some sort of gang or mob or something like that, which could be a motive, saving his own skin by killing someone else. And he's one of the few people we know leaves town on occasion. The other ones being Victor Luis, who moved to Buckfield from out of town, Terry Jones and Aaron Drum, who both were out of town the night of the murder, Mike Daniels, who is bailing his son out of hot water at the college, and Eddie Blake, who is a drifter. Everyone else, we don't know how frequently they leave town. Now, why is this important? Because the murder weapon was purchased from a sporting goods shop out of town. Jacob seems to tick all the boxes in my head, so I think it's him. Whew, this was a long section. Oh my god, that's about like 8 minutes. I'm going to give all the characters a 5 out of 5. They're all bubbly, charming, or enjoyable to hate in their own special ways, and it shows just how much care was put into them all, and the dialogue trees must have been a nightmare to account for. Now let me explain how logic will work. This is the logic to go from point A to B to C to D. But while this is a lot of good logic to follow, some of the logic is weird, And I have to give a special thanks to another RPG Maker YouTuber, Squishalski, as her playthrough helped me over the first big roadblock. Firstly, Day 1. Day 1 is a roadblock before interviewing the victim's mother. For context, Day 1 goes like this. You arrive in Buckfield first to find a payphone to set your last name and tutorialize saving. You then either head around Buckfield questioning who you can, or head to the police station to head to the crime scene. After you've investigated around, you head to the crime scene and find the victim's body, victim's bloody clothes, gemstone earring, cigarette butt, and footprints evidence pieces. Then head back to the church and search for the safe code, confront the pastor for being a creep, then head to interview the victim's mother. There's one small hiccup here. If you go to the police station first and then to the crime scene and then to the pastor's church, not only do you miss Olivia's first encounter, which could be a boon depending on how you look at it, you also have to footwork around the safe. You can't open the safe before Pastor Ron leaves the room it's in, which only happens after you speak to him and then leave the church. And I investigated the safe before I left the church the first time, so I completely forgot about it. I think one or two things could happen to streamline this. Firstly, have Pastor Ron outside looking for anything that could confirm his theory that Paul broke the window. This way you can talk to Ron and open the safe on your first visit to the church and don't have to go out and back in to move him around. Secondly, you could let the player interview Linda before opening the safe in the church, and have Linda mention the safe if you haven't opened it prior. It's just weird to me that Ron's safe is the trigger for Linda being available to interview. Another similar situation happens on Day 2, which I still haven't figured out and is where I'm stuck. You're tasked with entering the apartment building, questioning Paul, Carol, and optionally Olivia, investigate Jacob's room, and I don't know what to do after that. I'm left with two tasks. Find who stole the statue head, and question Eddie Blake, both of which I assume require me to get into the abandoned mall. So game dev, if you're watching this, please help. I was doing so good. The logic at this game gives you a bunch of tasks to do at once, and refuses to let you continue until you've done all of it. Even other connecting thread lines. Because of the hiccups this game has, I'll give it a 3 out of 5 for the logic. This game has so much heart put into the entire game, and you're exploring the same 3 to 4 screens. Buckfield Centre, Buckfield South, and Buckfield West as I called them, or East, sorry, Buckfield East as I called them, are full of life. And I wonder, like, it just feels like a sleepy town that's slowly losing all the life it had left. From the shuttered corner store, desolate mall, and partially crumbling apartment complex, to the lively restaurant and general store, quaint hotel, and ramshackle police station, it just feels homely. Similar in vibes to my hometown now, a once bright and lively place slowly crumbling to everyone's flight from it. It's awesome. The crime scene and several house interiors are also explorable, but there's much less important things to say about them. The lifeblood is the exterior, and it's so cool to see. There's obviously been so much care and life put into every single part of this game, and it's the small details that count the most. During Day 2, it's raining, and some flavor text, including the ones on the fountain, changed to reflect that. You can navigate around a lot more than you'd expect, and are rewarded for that with the receipt and cigarette butt evidence pieces. On the 3rd floor of the apartment building, there's a bunch of discarded trash, showing the disrepair the place is in. And some nameplates are missing from the door, showing the slow decline of the town. And the people move too. During Day 1, before the crime scene investigation, you can find Olivia near the mural and Victor in the doctor's clinic. After the investigation, Victor is asleep in the park and Olivia has gone home. It really helps sell this town as alive. The exploration, I'll give a 5 out of 5. For such a small map, it's got so much life in it. Great work, Dev. I had a really good time with a murder in Buckfield. There were multiple times where I put the controller down and tried to rationalize who I thought was the killer after several key moments, and I still think it's Jacob. It's got such heart and love in it that I want to finish it. I just got to figure out progression through Day 2 and beyond. So I'll give this game a 4 out of 5 for its enjoyability. This gives A Murder in Buckfield the final score of 21 out of 25. Not a bad showing at all, and it could be higher in the next review. This game is just a gemstone. It's the first non-traditional RPG I've played for this series, so like Creature Hunter G+, all the way back at the beginning, it'll set the standard for what's to follow, especially looking at games I want to look at in the future. There's really a lot less of me chopping around bits and pieces here because honestly, the gameplay is just here. Like it's not me knocking against the game. It just means that there's a lot less like visual editing I can do for it, which is a shame. But what a game, seriously. A Murder in Buckfield is such an interesting and dynamic experience that I'm chomping at the bit to get a closer look at it. But I'll wait for now. I will restrain myself. Next week, we're returning to the space adventure that is PKA. Hopefully, we'll run into more tuna and venture with rat people. I'll see you then, folks. Take good care of yourselves. Bye!